We have a guest artist, Susan Leibovitz Steinman, and I'm sitting here with faculty members Ju-Pong Lin and Cynthia Ross, and I'm Sharon Siskin. And so we're gonna have a conversation.
So, Susan, it was beautiful presentation. You have this sort of way of getting people really going, just showing up and, all of a sudden art starts happening. You showed us the situation in Appalachia where just all this whole amazing gardens and murals and tiles appeared, or in Germany when all of a sudden there were all these little portable gardens appearing. So I'm wondering, as the people engage with you or are drawn in to this activity and they discover that you are an artist, well, do they discover that you're an artist, and does that change, do you think, how they see the role of an artist or what an artist can be? I'm moving towards this question of how is the role of artist in our time transforming?
Okay, I'm invited as an artist. They know I'm an artist up front, and they know there's no subterfuge involved here. And what's missing from the slideshow last night is that there's a huge understructure supporting me. I never work alone. It's like a massive collaboration, and I'm often invited in. Like I explained in Appalachia, I was invited by the organization Apple Shop, and I was working directly with the Elkhorn City Historical Society, which included, the local people from the church and the local people who was a lawyer and the local businessmen downtown, and the school teachers. They're all on board before I get there. They all want something to happen. Nothing's been happening, and so my role is to be a cheerleader, and that's why I'm very cheery. And it's like I'm really like a matchmaker and someone who like offers a few creative ideas, and then there's lots of meetings that happen before the art happens. And there's like we meet in rooms with a big roll of paper around the wall, and everybody throws out their ideas, and there's a lot of ideas that don't happen, and then we try to see what's feasible, what's affordable, what's pragmatic, and what's doable in a limited amount of time. And then there's a lot of permissions that are needed, but because I'm an artist, what's most interesting is I seem to get permissions that other people wouldn't get. I have found that in town after town after town. The local people might have been, lobbying for years to get, a small plot to have a garden, and cannot get that permission. But because I come in as a guest artist from the outside, quote unquote, all of a sudden I have this cachet that someone in the town doesn't have. So on one hand, I'm the stranger, the other who comes in, but I'm also like some sort of, special person, who gets to get through these other levels. Like we could have a meeting with the mayor, we can have a meeting with the agricultural extension people. And there's like a lot of this meetings that happen, a lot of meetings, and a lot of thinking, and a lot of actually working with the people to develop what actually will happen. And like I told the story of the mural, when we got there, we walked around the place, and to an artist, the place looks like, really ripe for all kinds of like really interesting art installations. There's like old empty buildings that look like they could be art studios, There's junk lying around. You think you could make a junk sculpture, and all these art ideas come, but they want a mural. And so you really have to work with what they want. And they wanted a garden, at the waterfront. The waterfront was not well taken care of. And as an artist who works with the environment, I know that the waterfront is actually crucial to the health of the river. But they were already, really working for the health of the river. They were doing They were testing the chemical quality of the river every month and sending it off to the county for testing to make sure that it wasn't polluted. I mean, I was specifically invited because I was an environmental artist, and they were bent on saving their environment and not having it destroyed like all the surrounding regions in Appalachia. So it's interesting, but they wanted an artist. You know, and sometimes we almost got arrested because we hadn't asked them. There was really no, permission to, like I'm used to in the urban environment of having to get a permit to put something in. There's no permits in Appalachia. There's one cop in town with one cop car, and we're painting the whole town blue without permission from the one mayor and the one cop in the one cop car. So, it was this whole thing where my collaborator, Suzanne Lacey, had to run up to the mayor's house, have a glass of wine with him, schmooze with him, so that we didn't go to jail that night, to the one-room jail, And so, you don't know a lot of things until you start doing them, is what I'm trying to say. But they wanted an artist because they felt like we were neutral and we also could do something different. They've been trying a lot of things and nothing had been changing. And they wanted something creative and different to happen.
They, meaning
the people who invited us. And specifically, they were Apple Shop, and they were collaborating with the Historical Society people, which was a group of 20 people, who had roots in the town that go back generations. And the town was disappearing. The town at one time had been a railroad hub and had, several thousand people there. The railroad went away. The mining jobs went away. The town was literally down to 1,000 people. Storefronts were empty. The town was disappearing. Teenagers, when they graduated high school, would not stay there. But when we went and met with high schoolers, and the high school art teacher was a #1 ally. She was a #1 collaborator. She loved her students and was really a fabulous mentor to them. And she's the reason that I did ceramic tiles, because I went in and I saw she was doing all these ceramic tiles. And so I just took my background in ceramics and said, well, our mural is going to be ceramic tiles, and we'll work with what you're doing with your students anyways. But the students told us quite clearly, first of all, they couldn't understand why the students that we brought with us from Los Angeles would waste their spring vacation to come there, when all they wanted to do was leave. And, they saw it as a dead-end place. But when you talk to them longer, you found out they wanted to leave to work, but it was where they were going to retire. I mean, they were 16 years old, and they say, well, when I'm 65, I'm coming back here to live. It was where their roots were, and they were very tied to the land and to the river, and very, they wanted to save it. They wanted it to be there for more generations.
I'm interested in hearing you talk a little bit more about how you address conflict as an artist. For example, when you're working with a community and maybe not everybody wants to paint the town blue. So maybe somebody, one faction wants to paint it green, or, what do you do? How do you navigate those kind of conflicts within a community?
Okay. First of all, I really have to define the word community, which is in some ways a misnomer. There's probably 100 communities within a community. And the community that we were working with was, the Historical Society, the school teachers, the few business owners that were still downtown, and then the people who were attracted to our project, like I talked about the Tom Sawyer thing, that once you start working, people show up. And then we would bring our project to the senior center and to the churches. And actually, it's interesting when you talk about conflict, because the pastor invited us to church. First of all, they found out I was Jewish. They'd never seen a Jew before, literally. And so, they wanted me to change. So they kept inviting me every night. They go to church there. And so, on Sunday, all the students, and we went to church. And the pastor was lovely, I mean, amazing. And the pastor gave this amazing sermon on how that we coming in from California should not be prejudiced against the people there and think that they were ignorant. And that, you know, and all the stereotypes that come with visiting people in Appalachia. And that the people in the congregation should not, you know, have stereotypes against us as quote-unquote educated people that were coming in to tell them what to do. You know, that we were all there to work together, and that by meeting each other one-to-one, we could meet each other as people. And this was the sermon in the church. And it was, you know, amazing, you know, like the students from Los Angeles were crying. You know, it was like, you know, everyone was, because they were nervous, you know, because we brought in, you know, one kid with dreadlocks out to here, you know, who couldn't get through, you know, the airport security. And I mean, there's a lot of sub-stories to this thing, you know. But these people opened their arms to everybody, you know. But they did want us to go to church every night. So.
Every night.
They go every night and they sing and they pray. And, you know, it's part of their culture and what ties them to the land and ties them to the place. And it's almost, it's, you know, I say it's beyond organized religion. It's really deeply spiritual, deeply tied to place. And it's quite beautiful.
Susan, what you're saying, it is making me think about, you know, a critique of community artists who go in for a short period of time and then parachute in and then leave. And, you know, I feel like hearing your stories makes me really think about that critique differently. You know, it makes me think that it seems to me that you go into a community with a belief that even in a short time, you can really bond, you can build lasting relationships with people in that community.
Well, they thought we were moving there. They kept showing us empty houses we could live in. And Suzanne almost bought one. I think there was a really nice one along the river. But that's another story. You know, that is a serious critique, and I have that. People give it to me all the time because I am an itinerant artist, and I go for as short as 1 week. And they go like, well, you know, if you don't live there, and if you don't stay there, and if you aren't committed there, you know, like, you know, you're doing harm. And my number one mantra is no harm. You know, no harm, no waste. And also, I have this really deep philosophy that the project is not mine. The project is whatever community I'm in, whatever group I'm working with. And I'm just there, you know, to start some creative juices flowing, you know. And it's not my job to take care of the project. It really isn't. I'm not in it for maintenance, you know. I'm not even in it for making it, you know. I'm in it for the process of developing a project to increase the health and economic status and beauty of the environment people live in, because their environment has been degraded. And I feel like beauty has like such an important psychological impact, and it has such an economic impact. You know, no one wants to come to an ugly place that's got trash in it. And, you know, and tourists come through Appalachia and, you know, they're not going to stop in a town that's all trashed. But if they stop in a town that has a mural, you know, and a trail in it, then it feels welcoming. And it's a place that, you know, provides jobs to the people who stay in the town. So there's, you know, but whether these changes, you know, take place, it's interesting because in 2001, another artist, Jackie Bruckner, and I were artists in residence for the National Park Service in the Northwest region. And there was a big competition, you know, and we won it, Jackie and I. And so we won it because we had this community-based approach. And because Jackie's a really good sculptor. So see, this is like matching skills. Jackie's slides look better because they look like real art. And my spiel sounds better because I can work with communities. And actually, you know, I wanted Jackie's good art and I wanted, you know, to work with the communities. But what we didn't know was, this 1-year residency, that we didn't get to work with one town. They expected us to work with 3 towns for this, really minor budget, but our job was not actually to make art. Our job was to go into each of these towns and to work with groups to facilitate the town designing creekside, riverside, waterside trails, and using art to enhance the economic and ecological health of the towns. So we were a little frustrated because actually, as artists, we really do want there to be art as an end product, so we fudged it a little, but we went into Puyallup, Washington, and that was a very short project, but we spent a long time in Tillamook, Oregon, and in Caldwell, Idaho, which is outside of Boise. And when you go to each of these towns, you find out they really have similar problems. At one time, they moved against the water because that's what everybody did. That's where that's where it was for transportation, it was for food, it was for drink. Survival was against, being on the water. But then the roads came in and the railroads, so it became the place where you threw your trash. And water became polluted. And in Caldwell, they even, they cemented over their creek in the middle of town, whereas the creek was live on each end of the town and it went under the town. So when we got there, they were already interested in daylighting the creek. We didn't invent daylighting the creek. They wanted daylighting the creek, and they wanted to know how they could make their downtown, which was full of empty storefronts. It's a common recurring story of people leaving these small towns and leaving these incredible resources because, economic stability demands that they move to a larger city. And in fact, when they move to the larger city, they get trapped in, in even poorer urban areas, and that they can make decent, family-based livelihoods, community-based livelihoods, if they stayed in their small communities where they have these, ties for years and years and years, and fixed what other generations had done wrong. But talking about hostilities, there's always someone who does not want you there. It just comes with the territory. There's always someone who does not want you there. And you always have to have a meeting with some people who don't want you there, and you cannot make everybody happy. But I've learned that it's kind of magical thinking that the right people show up. You just go and you give a talk at the school and a talk at the community center, and then you turn around and there's these 10 people who show up by magic. And they're the people who make things happy, It's their town, they have a deep stake in the town, and they want something to happen. And they don't care who you are, what religion you are, what color you are. Because I go to places where I am the only white, old Jewish woman. And I work with young people, and I work with old people, and I work with lots of different cultures. And so the fact that they let me in to begin with means that they already have in their soul the drive for something different to happen. And they don't want me to have control over it, and I don't want control over it. They just want me to help them think of another idea for how it could be different, because it feels hopeless.
Lily, the amazing community artist who was a guest artist here a couple of years ago, talked about how she feels like her main job as the artist who comes in is to light people's pilot light, that she is the person who just comes in and lights the pilot. And I thought
that's a beautiful image. I love that image. Yeah, I like that image a lot.
Well, I like the example of I think the San Francisco landfill.
Yeah.
How people wondered who you were, the people who worked there, and maybe you could tell us a little more about how you won them over. And, it's just this beautiful, seeing it years later, it's a beautiful place, and people maintain it, and then they love it, and kids come. But how did you get in there and get
Well,
people
one of my
working.
role models and quote-unquote heroines is Merle Euclides, who invented this job for herself in New York City. She's a performance artist as the artist in residence for the New York City Garbage Company. And she saw that people treated the people who collect the garbage like they were the garbage. You know, that nobody talked to them. You know, in fact, if they took a break and sat on their stoop for like 3 minutes, they came out and they took a broom and swept them off because they were the garbage. So the first thing you do is just, you know, interact with people like they're people, like they're alive, like they're doing a job, you know, and that you're interested in what they're doing. And then you listen. I think maybe I didn't say that last night. You can tell I talk a lot. I'm very verbose. But when I'm working with a new group of people, I actually spend a long time listening. And you learn a lot by listening. And then, you know, I just learned, and it's like not, you know, a charade or it's not a put-on thing. I am interested in other people. I am interested in what they're doing and why they're there. And, you know, and what they think about what's going on. And you find out, like, all, you know, the dirt that you need to know to, you know, be able to do your project. And so, you know, every day I went down to, there was a cement pad, Sharon knows about it, where people drive up in cars and they dump their stuff from their house, you know, and you look at it and go like, oh my God, why did this get dumped away? And sometimes it's really sad, you know, like someone cleaned out an older person's house who died, and it's like, you can tell it's like years of photographs and personal memorabilia, and it's just like all going into the landfill. So, you know, you go there and it's like a treasure hunt, you know, you just go and you pick these things. And so when you make friends with the people who work on that pad, before you know it, you come to work and all of a sudden there's like little gifts at your doorstep. You know, like they knew I was collecting ironing boards. Like I like domestic items, you know, and I would come back to the studio after I was gone for a day or two and there would be a stack of ironing boards. You know, they got into the treasure hunt aspect of it, you know, and they started pulling things out, you know, and bringing them to me. The other thing is that you, in the process of talking to people, you try to make them feel like you're not there to take away their job. You're not there to do something that has a negative impact. You're there for them to tell you what can have a positive impact. And then you're realistic and say, you know, maybe nothing will happen, you know, because we don't know what will happen and we don't know what funds there'll be. And then you invite them into the process. You know, I realized that if I wanted to do the garden, I had to have them work with me. And at first, the 3 guys that were sent, and they were guys, because I needed big, strong guys who could, you know, operate forklifts. When they came to work for me, they were like rumbling that they had to work with the artists. And then they realized it was the best job on the whole lot. You know? And every day they wanted to go work with the artists because it was way easier than, you know, their hard job, you know, that they actually had to do every day. And, you know, and we talked about how I built this, you know, mountain out of concrete rubble from the freeways that were torn up after the earthquake. And I said, and they started just stack it up like this, you know, and I said, oh, no, see San Bruno Mountain? It has to look like San Bruno Mountain. And they looked at San Bruno Mountain. And then I came back the next day and it was stacked up like San Bruno Mountain. You know, they just looked at the mountain and they got it. You know, they knew by looking at the mountain, they would know how to stack the concrete. And then I planted it with, you know, native flowers. And now that concrete mountain doesn't exist anymore. It's covered in these, you know, flowers and plants and weeds that fly in. And so, you know, that's the underlying, you know, metaphor that you don't have to do a thing that, you know, after human beings have somewhere, the plants will take over anyways, you know. The grass grows back through a crack in the sidewalk.